Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So today I wanted to go ahead and read this article because we haven't done it in a while. And I like to read articles to see where the fat acceptance movement is. I feel like that's the best pulse you can have on the moment. So this article is from July 23rd, 2025. So it's very fresh, it's recent. And it says, we all agreed that diet culture was bad, so why is it back? So I want to go ahead and read this together and let's see what they have to say, okay? It's hard to ignore the signs that thinness is once again the body ideal, with increased engagement on posts that are often disguised as wellness content. Here's how you can protect yourself from blank this summer. I don't know what YouTube's not going to be happy with. Has anyone noticed a shift lately? You open TikTok and sift through videos of fit checks, body checks, workout tips, not feeling much of anything at all, except that vague sense of dread in the pit of your stomach. Is that influencer so slim because she follows a clean eating plan or because blank? Maybe there's a seismic change in the air. Celebrities are losing weight, even those who brand themselves as body positive icons. Others are being scrutinized for signs that they're taking WL drugs. Lana Del Rey. Ooh. You know, I have it right here. I do, if you're going to mention her. Lana Del Rey, a star once reviled for no longer looking 25 years old, appeared at Coachella looking 25 years old. What is this, idea that age is weight is age? That's something we're gonna have to look at. That's interesting. But I think it goes into this concept of weight is so out of control. It's like one of those things, it's the mystical energies, it's the crystals causing me to gain weight, right? Like it's these kind of concepts, which I do actually have some crystals. Maybe I can use that in my Lana era. Maybe I should bring them down at some point. Gotta wait for the full moon to cleanse them. Just kidding. Kidding, but not. Or am I? The point is, it's that mysticism. I feel like it's to say being thin is 25. Like when I was 25, I wasn't thin. I'm 33 and I'm pretty much there, So I don't know. It's a problem. This is my thin privilege crown. The internet's reactions to her reclaimed thinness was, "We are so back." A stranger's weight loss, it would seem, is a hairbringer of hope, or maybe a testament that fat shaming works. I think that there's just an impression, especially when we're looking at the vanity weight era, which is what this crown represents. There's a concept within it that basically when you're kind of snatched or in shape, it means that you are put together. There's a quality of feeling more put together, which I think that's what people were saying with the "we are so back" moment with Lana specifically. It's kind of like you're more put together again, basically. I guess to some people, especially people that have issues, they can't look at that clearly. People can't look at the concept of being put together clearly when it comes to size if there's toxic ritualistic stuff going on, because it's not always the most deeply emotional thing. Sometimes it's just a momentary excitement. We are so back. It's just a quick little moment on somebody's feed. It's not like somebody's actually crying over it and everything, It's just being happy for somebody, being happy for someone's success, someone's results, etc. So it's not always a shaming thing. It can be a positive thing and a supportive thing, which it's weird to have to even say that, but here we are, right? Okay. I've seen a huge uptick in content online that promotes diet culture and very often tips over into blank territory. E followed by the letter D, says Alex Light, a body image speaker. A lot of it is subtle, disguised as wellness, but some of it is blatant. like what I eat in a day videos, glorifying extremely, I don't know what to say. I guess low calorie, or creators encouraging their followers to be, quote, skinny legends. When you start to notice them, the signs are everywhere. Naughty's fashion trends are having a revival along with the idealization of Naughty's era bodies. Wellness discourse is crossing into alt-right territory. What? Just this week, an M&S ad was banned for featuring a model who was deemed unhealthily thin. AI is making everyone even more image obsessed, with people asking ChatGPT if they're hot enough. Politics is influencing beauty trends. Unabashed skinny influencers are mainstream. What on earth happened would be a fair question to ask. Didn't we all agree around a decade ago that diet culture was bad, that there's more to life than being thin? Okay. Wow. What a paragraph. We're going to have to like break this down a little bit. So, what is this article? I might have to look at this one soon. 1 second. Okay, I looked at that. It's a little bit older. It's from November. I might have to look at that one, though. We might have to look at that. Anyways, sorry. I'm just making mental notes. Again, I often am doing research when I do these articles. But let's break it down here. So I guess Naughty's is like 90s, right? Sorry. I'm not like the smoothest with this stuff. I'm guessing. So I guess they're thinking, okay, people were thin in the 90s, so that's coming back in. Wellness is crossing into alt-right territory. Okay. I would just, I don't know. We're just going to let it go. Fat acceptance, for whatever reason, it's taken a huge, like it's made a very big home base on the left. I think because of its very tenuous, although deeply ingrained ensnarement within feminism. I guess that's the best way I could put it. Like there is a very tenuous connection in reality, but it's very, very astroturfed within a lot of fat women within fat acceptance, that it's like a super feminist thing to be fat acceptance. So I think that's why it's currently at home on the left. So anything that's against it is automatically on the right, basically, when you're looking at it from in a toxic ritualistic point of view. So anything that is not fat acceptance is now right wing, and then anything is, I don't know what their delineation between right and alt-right would be, but that's like a whole other article. I think it's trying to elicit emotional response within the reader. So just be aware of that. It's manipulative. Okay. Models being unhealthily thin. Okay. AI. I mean, I feel like this is just a paragraph where they're trying to just talk about every single trend ever, or anything ever, basically. I almost wonder if it's like, like in the past, there used to be these articles and stuff that were like hashtag farming, basically, where it's like, let's put every single hashtag in so we can get the most engagement. That's kind of what this paragraph is giving to me, because ChatGPT being in this is bizarre to me. And then politics influencing beauty trends, as if that wasn't happening before or always. I don't know. Okay, unabashed skinny influencers are mainstream. I don't think that ever went away. I think for me, when I look at these articles, I'm always confused as to what they think it was like 10 years ago. I think that they're kind of a victim of a algorithmic echo chamber that formed 10 years ago, because the world kept going and the toxic ritualistic kept on going. Everything kept going as if nothing had changed. So I don't know what exactly they're thinking it was like 10 years ago. You know, I think that's where I'm confused. All I got 10 years ago, basically, from mainstream was I don't think we should publicly fat shame people anymore. And I don't think that you shouldn't be able to live your life if you're fat. That's basically it. Everything else, like, it's still unhealthy. It still doesn't look as good. It's still not as this or that, or, you know, whatever. It's still going to limit your dating options, especially from morbid obese onward. It's still, all the other stuff is, it's still. And it was still definitely hot to be thin, or still cool to be thin, but it maybe wasn't cool to brag about it. It was kind of like, that was probably more so the attitude 10 years ago. It's like, you can be hot and thin, you can be pretty and thin, but you can't brag about it. And you have to apologize for it. And I think maybe that's changed because, again, like, I'm a Swiftie, right? Taylor Swift is a great example of a thin woman who was still very idolized 10 years ago. 1989, hello, right? So I'm not understanding, you know, and maybe that's just the things that I see, but I feel like I'm looking at a more objective, I feel like I can look at it more objectively of what it was like 10 years ago. It was basically those types of trends. There was definitely more of a focus on niceness, being very nicey nice, and people pleaser, and that kind of thing was a big deal 10 years ago, but it also wasn't. You know, it was falling apart too. Like, there was a lot of people who were really mean, really nasty, in rebelling against it. So I feel like a lot of people have this like collective amnesia. You know, I didn't have a lot of fat shaming experiences prior to 2015. Most of the things that happened to me, which they were not that often still, they happened after. And I think it's because people were also being really rebellious against nicey nice people pleaser stuff. So I don't see what they're saying. I don't get it. It's very bizarre. And I don't know. It's always weird to me. Like, I always, when they talk about this, there must be some kind of like historical revisionism or something within this. It's very odd. Arguably, what scares me more is the engagement on these posts. Thousands of likes and comments applauding the dedication or asking for tips. Like continues, it shows this isn't happening in a vacuum. There's a wider cultural appetite for this kind of content. There always has been. Where have you been? Do I have to keep bringing up Freely the Banana Girl? You know, I think even like better examples like Michelle McDaniel, she was around, I believe, or, you know, she's been on YouTube for a long time. Now, she would just say, like, I don't think it's okay to be hugely fat, and people would be mad at her for saying that, but there's still people that would be mad today. If she says it today, she still gets hate comments today, you know? So I'm like, I'm not seeing it. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't remember exactly when Michelle started, but I think it was a minute ago. Like, I think it was a long time ago. Let me look it up. I'm gonna look it up. Hold on. Yeah, I thought so. So Michelle, the first video I'm seeing, weight loss tip number 1, how to keep a food journal. This is from 10 years ago. So literally. What is the revisionism here? Like, what is this? What are we looking at? Super strange. Super, super strange. An anti-diet advocate, Light is the author of You Are Not a Before and You Are Not a Before Picture. Sorry, I don't know, that title just made me laugh. And co-host of Should I Delete That? A podcast she co-hosts with M. Clarkson, which attempts to apply the nuances often left out of the polarizing conversations that take place in social media. Gosh, I need to look at this. We need to look at this. Should I delete that? Okay. Indeed, these symptoms of our divided times could be linked to diet culture's big comeback. Divided times? Honey, this has been going on for at least a decade, if not longer. Like, what am I reading? Can you guys tell me? Like, what is this? If that were true, then diet culture would have been raging back 10 years ago. I don't know. I think this article might be English, like, or from the UK. But, I mean, there was still, like, Brexit and stuff. That was polarized, no? 10 years ago. I mean, if we want to talk about it, let's talk about it. Things have been divided for a while. I'm just going to be real. Like, what is this revisionism? What is this? Anyways, the algorithm doesn't tend to reward nuance, compassion, or content that doesn't focus on aesthetics or transformation. Light says, what's common is wellness content that ends up reinforcing body ideals, gentle weight loss goals, healthy swaps, or hyper-disciplined routines. It might not look like traditional diet culture on the surface, but it reinforces the idea that your body is a problem to fix. What it is that certain people have goals and they look at this type of content. Especially if we're looking at Instagram specifically, Instagram is very visual. It is one of the most visual apps. It's all aesthetic. So a lot of times people just look and follow and watch people who are aesthetic to them. People have goals and stuff. And a lot of people have these goals, which they're like, oh, why do so many people have these goals? They never didn't. It was popular 10 years ago. If anything, it was even more popular 10 years ago. I think it's harder to break out within a niche now, like within like a fitness niche. It's actually harder, like, because it's a little bit oversaturated and, you know, like there's all this stuff. I think it's almost harder. But Gen Z is kind of having their moment. So maybe that's why. Because I feel like there's like a lot of Gen Z influencers coming up that are more like fitness oriented. So I don't know if that's what they're talking about, because I do notice I've seen a lot of like Gen Z men going into this space, but it's also like, it's, you know, probably a bit of a vacuum. It's also generation coming of age. Like there's a lot of reasons why that's going to happen. You know, I don't know. Because there were all of these fitness people for millennials too, like, and there were for Gen X. Like, there always have been. Like, I don't know. I don't understand the confusion here. I guess that's, I keep asking that. Like, what is this? What is this? You know? It's odd. Okay. Continue. Dr. Johanna Keeler, a psychologist specializing in you know what, confirms that seemingly benign social media content have made an insidious effect. She points to a recent study of TikTok algorithms, which found that people with you know what were far more likely to be shown appearance-oriented dieting and exercise content. They were 4,000% more likely to be shown toxic ritualistic videos. So basically, I'm going to just skip over that. Basically, it's saying that people that have these issues are more likely to be shown this type of content because they're interested in it. That's basically what I got, the gist of it. Didn't we all agree that diet culture is bad, that there's more to life than being thin? It's not the first time social media has sparked these concerns. This era echoes, you know what, Tumblr, but it has a shinier, more socially acceptable veneer, Light says. The website was host to a huge number of blank blogs that posted, you know what, in the form of personal pictures and Kate Moss GIFs, fostering one-upsmanship around users' daily food intake and workout routines. While this phenomenon was more brazen in its promotion of dieting, Light argues that the result is the same. We're still being told that our value hinges on how small, controlled, and ideal our bodies look. A lot of today's viral content is more implicit in its promotion of the beauty standard. A cursory glance at Instagram's Explore page will reveal paparazzi pictures of celebrities in bikinis. Their figures picked apart in the comments, and fitness influencers sharing weight loss tips. It's dressed up as wellness, clean living, or biohacking, Light says, referencing the coded terms creators use to avoid being canceled. I honestly think it's just really shallow on Instagram, to be honest, for the most part. Like, I have to just say that. I really do. I think it's mostly like aesthetics and stuff. And then people have aesthetic goals. But I don't know. I don't know why I guess that's hard for them to accept. But as Keeler's research suggests, this can function as a gateway to more extreme subcultures, influencers who are less precious about their wording. Liv Schmidt, a 23-year-old former TikTok creator, shared videos telling followers what she eats in a day to stay skinny, with slogans including, "It's not a sin to want to be thin," after being barred from the app. Schmidt started a membership program she calls the Skinny Society, where subscribers pay $20 a month to gain access to her portion-controlled food diaries and group chats where members compare step counts and progress pics. So I think that there is a lot of people want some community and stuff. I don't know why I have to like explain this to this article, but it's kind of like people have goals and they want support or they want a community. One of you guys actually commented, "Thank you for the community that I'm forming here," which that was the first time I heard that. So, I think so anyway. So I appreciate that. I think it's what I can do. I'm trying to at least carve some kind of a niche here or carve something for people who need it. I think everybody needs something different, and I can be your introvert cringe fitness influencer. No, I'm just kidding. I can be your, the one that's like, I don't even know. I can't think of a Lana quote right now, but the one that's like, I just ride. I can sit here and talk to you about how in my vanity weight era, I feel nostalgic all the time. And I think about my childhood a lot and weird stuff, but it's like different than when I was bratty. When I was bratty, I was like, oh, like this is how I got here. Now it's like, did we all feel that way when we were young? Like it's just weird. I think of weird stuff all the time. It's really annoying, actually. I feel like my brain is like half like out of commission, but then it's like all this deep stuff is like readily available. It's just so weird. But it's like a ball of emotion. But then I'm also like more introverted than I've been in a long time. So it's like I have all these feelings, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. If you know that one from Lana, she said that before, but I don't. And it's, and then I'm just started listening to a lot of 90s, like it's kind of sappy, sad music, like the Goo Goo Dolls and stuff. I mean, it's just weird. It's weird, but I'm here. There's not a lot of introverted people that do this, and I'm going to do it. And a lot of you guys appreciate that perspective, and I appreciate that you appreciate it. So I'm like, I can talk. It took me 10 years to learn how to talk, which I know that's terrible to admit, but it's true. It was not natural whatsoever. And I have the skill, so I'm going to do it. So here I am. Okay. Anyways, that's why people want community. Seeing Gen Z engage with his rhetoric has been a big shocker, says Gina Tonic, senior editor and podcast host at Polyester Zine. The worst thing I've seen is skinny talk and, Letter D, Twitter accounts making their way into normal algorithms, being seen by many who didn't know they existed prior to that. Though TikTok has banned the Skinny Talk hashtag, the community is still active and growing on the app. You hope younger generations will be more socially aware, but it's not necessarily the case. They make the same mistakes we do, and that's hard to watch. Tonic notes the responsibility to police this content ultimately lies with social media platforms who seem to prioritize engagement over well-being and social justice. So very interesting. Remember that they're trying to apply institutional pressures because they've lost the culture. So that's what that tells me. So we want to pressure TikTok to ban the hashtag, for example, rather than actually engage with it. You know, why aren't fat acceptance people, why don't they do a little arguing back? Why don't they start, you know, doing what anti-FA does if they're so about it? No, they have to completely get rid of it, you see, because they don't have any, you know, I would have watched some of them if it hadn't been taken down, and I would have given some perspective, because I do think that some of the ideas are not always the best, but it's like, you can't even do it anymore. I was going to do it, but it's gone. Kind of weird, right? She says an early sign of the pendulum swing back to diet culture was creators who centered their brand on self-love or body positivity or fat liberation shifting to be around weight loss. Many TikTokers who have undergone transformations opened up about their use of GLP-1s, which have been hailed as miracle drugs while giving rise to ethical concerns. Part of a cultural shift to the pursuit of thinness at all cost, these admissions seem more jarring to those who remember a time when showcasing diverse bodies on the internet was celebrated. But it was celebrated in certain circles, you know, and even in those circles, it was celebrated under certain conditions. So, like, I don't know. I think it's just literally a case of that's what you paid attention to, you know? Because they would try to, I know that they act like, okay, they will act like they had the entire left of politics in the 2010s, but they didn't. I knew plenty of people that are liberal or left wing or whatever, even like far left, that were never for it throughout the 2010s. So it's like, who were they paying attention to? You know, especially if you're looking abroad and stuff, that was not a thing in most of the world at all, even in the 2010s. It's still, you know, we have this weird thing going on where, like, England is, like, weirdly taking on fat acceptance while America is slowly getting over it, kind of, hopefully. Oh, gosh, I hope and pray. I do think it's weaker here than it's ever been, which that's why they're freaking out. But honey, it can always come back. Do not be complacent. And I'm not going to be as an activist, but it's weird because, like, England is, like, taking it on, like, delayed, weirdly. Like, it's just weird. I think that's why England is kind of an interesting case. Like, one of you guys have opened up to me about how weird it is that it's happening. And I noticed it happen. The other two countries I saw it a lot, especially Canada, but that kind of makes sense. And then I saw it a lot. It was, I don't know. I don't think it actually happened in Australia. I think it was more of like a university thing in Australia, like probably like certain bubbles in Australia. But they were like making a lot of content. Like I noticed a lot of Australians doing like fat acceptance content, which was interesting because that's not a thing there, I don't think, in general. I mean, it could have changed by now. I'm not as familiar with Australia now, but that's like all I've really noticed. Everywhere else, I don't think it's a thing. And I don't, you know, I don't think so. You know, maybe there's like pockets of Japan kind of having a moment, but I think I saw an article about that once. But I mean, is that really mainstream in Japan? I doubt it. You know, it's like, what are they looking at? it's like, honey, like in the 2010s, you had a certain like internet pocket in the United States, I think in a lot of like women-centered content, and that was about it. And there were still people that were like, it's not about being fat though. It's about people that have other issues. Like, I heard that the whole time. Sorry, I know this is weird. I'm reading this weird and I'm kind of all over the place, but I need you to understand that I'm in a deficit. So you're going to have to just go with me. You're going to have to ride. You're going to have to Lana ride with me. Okay? Anyways, an interview with Beauty Matter beauty industry critic Jessica DeFino said that during this time, anti-diet culture limited what beauty standards the media could promote without facing public backlash. Okay. But even if the movement was more about optics than genuine progress, with celebrities cashing in on wokeness for clout, Light claims this was preferable to the situation we find ourselves in. A lot of it wasn't perfect, of course, but it cracked open the conversation, gave marginalized bodies visibility, and challenged narrow beauty standards. Okay. Like, I don't understand this weird millennial kind of cringe thing. I wonder if they're millennial. If they're not, they have millennial cringe. But there's this very weird thing within millennialism, if you want to call it that. Even if you're not a millennial, you're having a millennial trait, where they cannot accept that trends change. Things shift. And I don't know how they couldn't see that, because like the 2000s to the 2010s, it was a drastic shift. And, you know, there were a lot of, if we look further back in the past, there were a lot of drastic shifts from the 90s to the 2000s, from the 80s to the 90s, from the 70s to the 80s. Like, it tends to be like around every decade that things shift. And I guess the millennials thought that they'd be the exception, that the 2010s would last forever or something. I don't know, you know, it goes against all historical precedent, but okay, you know. You know, as far as I'm aware, I wasn't there, but the 80s were all about being like really happy and cheesy and kind of like saccharine, and the 90s were about being like really nihilistic and, you know, sad and sappy and Goo Goo Dolls-ish, you know? And, you know, it's like things change, you know? It shifts. Things change. Like, it wasn't very saccharine anymore in the 90s, you know, especially the early 90s. There was a lot of like rap and stuff that was very like politically serious, and, you know, things shift. I don't know. Like, why is that hard for them to see that that's all it was? Like, corporations saw it as profitable for the time, and then it wasn't anymore. So then they shifted. Which some of it has to do with Gen Z coming of age. Some of it has to do with a lot of millennials having a change of heart. That's me, for example. I was never fat acceptance, but I was toxically ritualistic, and I've had a drastic change of heart. You know, and there's a lot of millennials that have had a change of heart on this issue. Sorry, not sorry. You know, Pluto and Scorpio generation. We're going to change sometimes. You're going to have to deal with it. But not all of us, you know, but it's like, I see why it happened. I don't know. It's not that hard to figure out. Okay, anyways, let's continue. And though it can seem like progress has been permanently reversed, Tonic believes that sometimes things have to get worse before they get better. Fat liberation, a lot like feminism, has come in waves of popularity, and the tide seems to be out at the minute. I do think it'll come back full force soon. So I have told you guys I do feel like there's going to be a fat lash, especially late this year, early next year. So I do think there will be something. I think something's brewing. There has been some aspects of it, but it's been very hidden and covert. And, you know, like Aubrey Gordon, the bullshit she's doing with Angelica's channel and stuff, like it's there, but it's all hidden. I do feel like it will come out in the open soon. But I don't know if it will be a lasting trend because they're forgetting that Gen Z was never about it. Gen Z was never really about being fat. And a lot of millennials weren't about it, but a lot were, but also a lot that were have changed their mind. So it's like when you combine that, now most millennials are not about it. Gen Z wasn't really ever about it. You know, it's like, it's obviously going to shift trends. And I think in some ways Gen Z has pushed certain, you know, as they're stepping into their 20s or they're in their 20s, it's like they're taking more control of a cultural conversation. That's a natural evolution that occurs. So some millennials maybe have been influenced by Gen Zs, you know, it happens. It happens all around. But I think those two generations especially have, you know, especially millennials have changed, and probably a lot of people have changed their mind. I think my honest opinion about it is I feel like the panini, because obesity was tied to the panini, it was a huge reality check for a lot of people. Myself, for sure. You know, it was a huge aspect of that. And I think it did speak to society in general, and it changed a lot of minds. And I knew that Gen Z wasn't really about it even before they weren't really about it. So I don't know. You know, I think that they have a lot of, fat acceptance has a lot of headwinds, but they have a lot of institutional power. So it's not over by any stretch, and it could come back. It absolutely could. So you do have to be on your guard about it, but it is weak right now. And, you know, it is. But I don't think it will stay weak. I don't think it will last, though, because I think the bigger undercurrents of the moment, it's too hard to, I think it's going to be too hard for them to overcome, especially as more people age and they have worse issues with their health and stuff, like we've seen that happen to a lot of people too. Within the millennial generation, a lot of people died. So it's like you have to look at that too. Like there's a lot of things that they're up against when it comes to this that are going to be longer term problems. I do think there could be a fat backlash, fat acceptance backlash, basically, where they kind of, you know, they're doing it covertly, but I think it will become overt. But it's not going to last, I don't think, because those headwinds aren't going to change. Fat acceptance has pissed everyone off. Fat acceptance is, I don't know a group that it actually appeals to anymore. People woke up to it. On both sides of the aisle, honestly. You know, being fat used to be extremely accepted on the right. And I guess the left, quote unquote, had their moment, even though I don't think they ever really did, but okay, you know, we can pretend, right? That happened, but I'm just saying, like, I think it's one of the few unifying issues that exist. But there is a lot of headwind, weirdly, and a lot of institutional drives to continue it. And I do think we have to consider why. You know, and I think there are probably there are probably some institutional reasons, and I don't want to get like too tinfoil hattish in this video, but I do think we have to question it, whether it is, I don't really care who it is. I think there's certainly corporate interests. There's certainly probably some government interest in it too. Like, it's bizarre. It's just bizarre, And I do think that we have to look at this from that perspective as well, which we're going to in this era. I told you guys we would. But we need to ask ourselves, why was this pushed so heavily? And why is it now happening in the UK? Because you're seeing that happen there now. Isn't that interesting? It's so bizarre. It's weird to see it as an American, to see it happening to somewhere where it was never a thing and never popular there at all. Like, zero. I never, growing up, I never thought, British people just love fatness. I never thought that, ever. So it's like, what the hell is going on, It's just weird. But we might have to look at the UK too, because maybe that will give us some answers as to what happened here. America is the birthplace of fat acceptance, but I do think we need to look further into where it came from, and I'm going to do some videos on that too, because I want to see it and see where certain, let's see what connections we can have. I know some aspects of the history of it, but let's go deep. I think we should go deep. And yeah, let's see. Okay, anyways, I'm really going all over the rails today. But that's okay. This is research. Okay. In the meantime, it's important to practice awareness and to consider safeguarding measures. In a recent study, almost 1 in 5 UK women screened positive for a possible blank. But that's a possible one. Doesn't mean that they have it. The most effective way to break yourself out of negative thinking patterns, addressing that pesky phone addiction. Any sort of intervention to try to limit your exposure should help improve your appearance, satisfaction, and well-being. Tonic agrees, but also advocates engaging with online content that makes you feel good. So kind of creating more of an echo chamber, maybe reinforcement mechanisms. I think making an active commitment to following and engaging with accounts that are body positive and seek to decenter and oppose these conversations will help so much. She says, curate a feed and algorithm that feeds you the right things. Negative things online are unavoidable at this point, but pointedly engaging with content that counteracts it will do wonders. Okay, that's interesting, I guess. So trying to advocate for individual action to shift algorithm. That's interesting. Light similarly has found hope by building a positive online community. The messages I get from people who started to eat more freely, wear the clothes they love, stop punishing themselves, all reminds me of that change. All reminds me that change is happening, even if it's gradual and it's not trending, she says. I do think a question to ask yourself is, who benefits from me believing I need to be smaller? Oh, and I'm wondering who benefits from me believing I need to stay fat. That's my question. I'm starting to have those questions because it's very bizarre. The answer is never you. It's the multi-billion-dollar diet industry, knowing that I'm fine exactly as I am and that I don't need to be smaller is an act of rebellion. Real joy and confidence come from opting out. I definitely think there's some I think there's a lot of interests behind this. I think there's quite a few interests. But okay, let's go ahead and end it there. Thank you guys so much for listening to my long tirade of craziness, for enjoying, hopefully, The Crown that came out. It was summoned. Lana was mentioned, so I had to. And again, I am looking at this from an American perspective, and I think that there's a lot of questions that we need to look at. So I appreciate this. I appreciate you guys for listening. I will talk to you guys again soon. Have a good one. Bye.